Welcome to tutorial 1.10. The assignment is taking either Desprez's suggestive account of clever Hans or Donna Haraway's suggestive thoughts that we are cyborgs, make a case that Descartes is wrong, that the locus of thought is unextended minds. Descartes' idea that the locus of thought is unextended minds promotes at least two errors. First, the suggestion that people are the only beings with minds indicates that people are independent and exceptional, yet that idea cannot be justified. Second, it suggests that minds/identity should be inflexible. Yet the truth is, people's identities are altered by material circumstances. People are not as independent and exceptional as Descartes presumed, because you can say something about how people actually rely on machines, or you can also say animals are intelligent too. You can say things about that. That's in both the readings, and I'll go through some examples for you in the tutorial. Identity is alterable because now you can go through how our social environments can alter us and how extra social environments can alter us. So things like animals, like horses, and nature all those things can alter who we are. Descartes' view is that there's this mind that's unextended. It can't be impacted by physical things. So it's sort of transcendent, and there's issues with it. Let's go through it, and then I'll go back through this outline again at the end. So there's the two errors: the independence of people, the exceptionality of people, making suggestions about people being the only rational ones. Animals are below us. We're independent from other people. We're independent from our nature. Those are problems that I'll go through. Identity, the problem with identity: if this mind is an immaterial, untouchable thing, then minds aren't shaped by society, animals, nature. Mind is created by God. It's not a brain, and you didn't evolve. Brains didn't evolve. So presumably, you can't really learn from evolution. You can't really learn from learning about the brain, because our mind is not the brain. So that's a problem, because there are a lot of things that you can learn about when you learn about evolution and you learn about these things. So the new Cartesian, the neo-Cartesian view in Western society is a problem. I think it's sort of prevalent in certain groups today still. So I'm just going to go through quotes, and I'm going to try and connect them to the assignment for you and to that outline. Haraway's talking about C3I, command, control, communication, intelligence. This was covered in the lectures. Where I think it connects is that we're talking about these $1 million machines that the US military has, Canadian military has, the cell phones or smartphones that we have, that we rely on all this technology. And Descartes relied on technology for his shelter, for his food security. We're going to depend on those things, even if you don't, agricultural things that we have, these amazing technologies. We're not dependent in the kind of in the kind of Cartesian way. We're dependent on machines. So that's one part that I think you could discuss. Also, this is about animals, sorry, not about machines. The boundary between human and animals thoroughly breached. So the last kind of ideas of uniqueness of humans were language, tool use, social behavior, mental events. And but now those things aren't really separate between humans and animals anymore, because we know that there's semblances of language and tool use and social behavior and mental events. These things happen with all animals. Okay, and then also all of these biology and evolutionary theory, all these findings have reduced the line between human and animals. There's less of a line, less of a distinction. We know that the genetics are close. We know that the behaviors are close. That undermines this myth that people are separate from animals and that they're transcendent of animals. Here's from Desprez: the horse has taught humans, without their knowledge, the right gestures to involuntarily perform. So the horse, as we've learned in the reading, is teaching the people sort of how to move, to give cues and things like that. And the people, they behave differently in front of the horse. So the myth is that people are exceptional. And that's what Descartes is saying, that people are rational because they have these minds that animals don't have. Well, animals are exceptional, and humans are not the only animals that are exceptional. Okay, and that's what I'm saying there. Horses are generally excellent muscle readers. Perfectly trained horses, they can interpret the rider's movements before the rider even does the movements. Okay, and talented horses read through their skin, their muscles. Hans could read the signals visually. Hans was truly talented. There's talent in the animal kingdom. And so again, Descartes is wrong with his theory that there's this immaterial mind only in people. Animals don't have it, and thoughts don't arise from the brain. That's a problematic view. And I think you can write about it. You could quote things like this. It would help. And then for identity, I just want to mention quick that the Cartesian view is problematic because it gets us away from learning that our brains are shaped by our evolution. Our brains are shaped by different things, and that shapes who we are and who we've become. Here's this interesting example where modern humans, before the agricultural revolution, before the invention of agriculture, had larger brains, 1,500 cubic centimeters. That's 10% larger than today, which today's brains are 1,350 cubic centimeters. So in the archaeological record, we found these skulls of ancient modern humans that have larger brains. So those types of things can teach us things. When we do that type of research, we can learn, we can develop new theories. But if you're just saying that the mind, the thinking part of a person is just this immaterial thing, now you're undermining all those lessons that we can learn from science, from evolution, from archaeology, from anthropology, all these things. So here's Haraway saying that teaching modern Christian creationism should be fought as a form of child abuse. Now, I mean, that's a little bit harsh, but some forms of Christian creationism, I think what she's getting at, they undermine evolutionary theory. They undermine that we can learn stuff from doing psychology, and they shun modern psychology, modern science, and modern understandings of the body, because they can say, well, God created the mind the way that it is. God created it perfect, and there's nothing we can learn from studying biology, from studying evolution. And there are these amazing things that we can learn and test and improve how we educate and how we understand ourselves. So it's a kind of a problem. And also on the other side, if you're saying that the mind is this immaterial thing, then that's suggesting that there's no way to improve it, that there's no way to impact it. But the teaching of Christian creationism, when you teach children things, certain ideas, certain beliefs, that's going to inform who they become as adults. That's going to inform who they become even as children. And that matters, and that should matter. So saying that there's this immaterial, immovable, untouchable mind, untouchable identity is a problem, because there are touchable identities. There are ways that you can traumatize children or change them, or commit them to having a closed perspective. There are a lot of problems with that Cartesian view. Hopefully that you can make the connections there. Also, your identity is shaped by society. There's these different ways. Just skip this one for now. Here's some ways that we are all shaped by. These are the negative ways that society can shape us, and that Haraway goes through. The tradition of the tradition of racist, male-dominant capitalism, this idea of progress, appropriation of nature, and just using nature as a resource, dualisms of mind and body, dualisms of animal versus machine, just this control over the planet, these wars that we fight, appropriation of women's bodies. So these are ways that we have been educated, and that challenges what Descartes is saying, because Descartes is saying, well, the mind is what it is. It's set up. It's immaterial. We can't impact it. But that's not the case. You can impact it. We have been indoctrinated into these beliefs about male-dominant patriarchy, gender norms, different things that can be harmful, that can be hurtful to people. And we can challenge those things. We can learn differently. To say that the mind is immaterial undermines those ideas. And I think that's what we can say in this assignment, that we should get away from saying that the mind is this transcendent thing. Here's to Spree. So the horse is making the human bodies be moved and infected. The minimal gestures, there's a slight ellipse of the head. Humans replace their own spontaneous moves with that of the horse, so they learn the horse's movements. Hans taught them the gestures. Hans changed the habits of their body. So the reason I wanted to use that quote here is there's again this idea that not only from society, so this is how society shapes who we are, and we're not this immaterial mind, and also animals can shape who we are. Our pets can shape who we are. Horses, nature can shape who we are. And to say that that's not possible because our minds are these distinct entities, our identities are distinct from the brain. No, those things can be shaped. And that's important to remember. And also important to remember because people who grow up in cities and maybe don't have access to nature, that's important. And that should be studied, and that should be understood. There's a problem if you're just going with the Cartesian view. So just lastly, Haraway's saying that the problematic view, Descartes' view, is that there's this ultimate self untied at last from all dependency. It's independent, it's not interdependent, and it's black and white. There's this distinction between material and immaterial. And that's problematic. Why? Because she wants to introduce this idea that there can be pleasure in the confusion of boundaries, where we have a world without gender. The boundary would be that you have to be a certain way. You have to be this, fall into these certain categories. You have to be this type of partner with your loved one. You have to be this type of child. You have to be this type of worker. So when we confuse those boundaries, we can imagine new things, a new world. A world without end and salvation, meaning that it's just constant. We can always improve it, and we should not settle ourselves with these boundaries and just accept them. That's what she's talking about, and thinking about things in a more of a continuum than this stark, like black and white dualism dichotomy view. Okay, so back to the outline. Just go through it one more time. Descartes' idea that the locus of thought is unextended minds promotes at least two errors that I went through. First, suggests that people are the only beings with minds, and that indicates that people are independent and exceptional, but that cannot be justified. Second, it suggests that minds and identities should be inflexible, yet the truth is people's identities are altered by material circumstances, any kind of circumstance. They're alterable. They're not these transcendent things. Okay, people are not as independent and exceptional as Descartes presumed, because you can talk about machines, you could talk about how animals are intelligent, and there's a whole bunch of quotes and a whole bunch of material from the readings. And yes, the assignment says do one or the other, but I think it makes sense to use both of them. That's why I've done the tutorial this way. You could just go with one. Maybe there's too much material if you tried to go with two. Maybe you don't have time to read both. But anyways, hopefully I gave you enough material that you could do either or both. And identity is actually alterable. Identity is alterable. It's not this transcendent mind that can't be touched by your upbringing. Okay, so identity is alterable because our social environments can alter us, and nature, animals, and everything else, our environments can alter us. So hopefully that was clear for you. And now I'm just going to do a quick little disclaimer here. So potential controversy is that the assignment's saying Descartes is wrong, locus of thought is unextended minds. Does that mean all religion is wrong? Or does that mean that people don't have souls? Some people believe in ghosts, the paranormal, heaven and hell, reincarnation, resurrection, all these kinds of things. That's okay. I don't think the assignment is suggesting that those views are wrong. Any of those views are wrong in that sense. This is just, I think the suggestion is that the ideas are untestable, unfalsifiable, unknowable. And they just don't have place in academic pursuits because academia studies things that are knowable. And also the idea of soul is not strictly Descartes' view. In ancient Chinese philosophy, they have Han and Po, and that's from the middle of the 6th century. That's the idea of these two different types of souls. Proto-Austronesian, so that's like ancient Taiwan, Philippines, and all the Austronesian communities. There's this idea of dual soul, body soul, Nawa, and the free soul located in the head. That's from around 3500 BCE. So these ideas are ancient. So definitely not strictly Descartes, not strictly Western. There's the idea of soul all around the world. Okay. And then also from philosophy, there's been a long tradition of believing that there's this soul that moves people, that's like the locus of thoughts, right? Plato believed that there was a psyche and that was the essence of persons, and he was drawing that from his teacher Socrates. He considered that there was like souls could exist after death and they could think without the body. That's ancient. Ibn Sina, who is an Islamic scholar from around 1000 of the Common Era. So he was known to the European scholars because the Islamic scholars were the ones who translated Aristotle and Plato and kept that tradition alive and wrote commentaries on that. And that's Descartes had access to those things. And Ibn Sina wrote about the soul also and has famous views, and they kind of inspired Descartes and other scholars in the West, which is also a very interesting thing. Descartes is wrong in the sense that he is wrong to claim to know that the soul is separate from the body and that is an unextended entity. Descartes' conclusions are unfalsifiable, which I suggested in other tutorials, and they have these problematic implications, I think. So the neo-Cartesian, so like this caricature of Descartes that exists today, it tends to lead people to disregard the brain as the locus of thought, and then you can't learn about brain science. You can't learn about evolutionary psychology and really improve how we educate others and how we educate ourselves, how we understand ourselves. And it can prevent people from learning important verifiable facts about all these things, about upbringing, about our prejudices. It can lead us to undermine our prejudice. Oh, it's no prejudice. God made me this way. It's like, well, no, you can improve. You can change those things. There are ways. Yeah, it's just this the idea of immutable soul is problematic. And I think for religious people, it should be also. Your identity is impressionable. Okay, so that's all I had. I just wanted to clarify those things. Hopefully this tutorial helped you out.